I have Nicholas here, who is Tarot Vista,
Hmm.
and I learned about Tarot Vista from basically Instagram and following the YouTube and how funny Nicholas is very funny. So, and we've talked a little bit about let's see, Tanya Harding,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and a little bit about sewing and embroidery because you do that, I do that, so
Hmm.
that's kind of fun. And the one thing I love about um, Nicholas is sort of the theatricality that's there, that's present, as well as the energy. So I thought I would ask you about things, and hopefully people will be interested. I mean, you have a YouTube channel,
Hmm.
and I have a YouTube channel, so it's always cool to kind of join and kind of just talk and sit down. But this is more about you because I'm very curious. So tell me about yourself and I guess growing up and then how you got into tarot.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a little tiny place called Watertown, New York, which is very, very, very far northern New York State. It's almost like half an hour to the Canadian border where I grew up. And my family owns a restaurant in Watertown, New York, and it is the oldest established restaurant in town, and they've been in the business for a very long time. And I mention this because when I was young growing up, the restaurant itself was like this old, ancient 1920s building. And so as a kid, going in to see my family, and living in the world that we did, it was like growing up in a time capsule. It
Mm,
was like growing up inside of a world that had been preserved for many, many, many decades. Uh, and so I think from a very young age, I always had a strong appreciation for old stuff. And pairing with that, uh, I also had a very strong appreciation for really weird stuff. Uh,
mm.
Also, where my mom's family, my mother's mother got her start reading fortunes, also way up in northern New York, reading fortunes for quartz miners. And this goes back like over 100 years. This is my great great grandmother. Uh, she lived on a piece of property where there was a quartz mine deep underground, and she would raise canaries for the miners to take with them down into the mines, because in those days you would
Yeah.
bring canaries down into the mines. So if there was a gas leak or something in the mines, the birds would breathe in the gas in their little lungs and they would suffocate and they would die. So the miners would know they had to get out. And so she would raise canaries for these quartz miners, and they would come to see her. And when they were waiting to get their canaries or whatever they were doing, they would sit in her parlor and she would read their tea leaves and she would do all
Hmm.
these. And so the women in my mom's family always did these bizarre things. I learned tea leaf reading from an older cousin. I grew up with my mom reading tarot cards, and it was something that I always thought was, again, relatively normal. And it wasn't until I left home and left this area of the world called the North Country, Northern New York State, where I kind of saw that it was very, very different, and not everybody was doing these things. Not everybody had grown up in this time bubble,
Mm.
and not everybody had grown up reading tarot cards and fortunes and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's really, really cool. So canaries would essentially, when they died, everybody said get out because it's like a
Mhm.
methane leak or something or some other gas. Canary in a coal mine,
Yep,
canary
yeah,
in a quartz mine. Were the Was it just regular quartz or was it like Herkimer quartz or
it was quartz, and there was also marble.
okay.
A geologist would know like what that meant, but it was a place. They had a farm, and on this farm there was this mine. And it was called the Green Hill Mines, and we went there several years ago, and we went, and it's like this mound above ground, and there's like all these little fragments of quartz
Hmm.
that look like little veins of like clear stone running through like bits of marble and stuff like that, just lying all over the ground. And at the very top of this hill, there was like this strange building, and my grandmother was with us at the time, and she said, "Don't go near that; you'll fall underground into the mine shaft." And lo and behold, we were walking around, and you can see the stones getting rickety, and so we had to kind of get off it. I don't know, we were probably trespassing or something, and somebody else's property by that point. But it was a cool thing to see, and it looks like bands of clear, glittery stone. That's all I
Okay.
can describe it as.
I didn't know you actually, well, I thought you got like quartz from caves, well, I guess crystal formations, but quartz has industrial uses too.
Hmm.
So I know mining quartz and marble. I know that up north, I think northern New York, the Herkimer diamonds, which are actually
Hmm.
quartz, and they're
Hmm.
like ultra clear, beautiful stones.
Yeah,
I think the place is called Herkimer. That's how they got their name.
yeah, you're exactly right. In Herkimer, New York, where my mother actually lives near there now. But when I was young, we went to the Herkimer diamond mines,
Mm,
and that you can go there and you find these little clear stones that look just like diamonds, just lying on the ground.
wow.
You do have to kind of like dig around and
Yeah.
round around and find them. And when I was a kid, when they took me, I was like 6 years old or something, and I was just like, I could not believe my luck. My parents were taking me to a diamond mine. And I remember also when I was young, there was a movie that had come out or something. Maybe it was even before, but there was a popular movie, and it was like one of those things like Romancing the Stone or
Hmm.
Congo or something. One of those movies from back in the day where there's like precious stones and diamonds, and the Hollywood people were using the Herkimer diamonds as a substitute for the diamonds. So this diamond mine kind of had this claim to fame that like they were out in the boondocks in upstate New York, and they were like, and the people from Hollywood really like our diamonds. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've seen. I don't have any. I have quartz, but I don't have any Herkimer diamonds. But they're
Yeah.
so clear. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, yeah. If I hadn't packed all my stuff up, I would haul out my jewelry box and I would show you. I keep some of the ones that I got when I was a child
Mm,
in my jewelry box, and now you find them at metaphysical shops and spiritual
mhm.
shops all over the place. And now you'll find like some little stone, and it'll be like a Herkimer diamond for $60, and I'm always like, $60 for this thing? Had I
Yeah.
known they were going to be that expensive, I would have gotten a lot more when I was a kid. Um, because now, and now they ascribe all kinds of metaphysical properties to
Mhm.
them. I couldn't tell you what those properties were off the top
Yeah,
of my
I don't either. I guess it's just quartz.
head. Hmm.
So, how long have you been serious about tarot? So, um, just, I guess, when did you start really like focusing and learning tarot, or was it a gradual thing?
I would say it was definitely very gradual.
Okay.
When I was young, when I was 10 years old, I went on a camping trip with my mother, my sister, and maybe some other people. And we went to the Adirondack Mountains, which is not far from where I was born. And there was this little village called Lake Placid. And it was kind of this strange little town where the zoning laws make the whole village look like it's like a Swiss
Hmm.
chalet town, to kind of have that like alpine flair in the middle of the woods. And it was also where they hosted the 1980 Winter Olympics. Uh, and so we had gone camping, we had gone hiking, and we had come down the mountain, and there was some little gift shop in Lake Placid. And I can remember rooting around in the gift shop, and there was this little wicker basket laying on the floor. And I peered inside, and deep inside this little wicker basket, there was a deck of Rider-Waite tarot cards. And I had known what the tarot cards were, just tangentially, having seen them, having seen people with them, having seen people in my family with them, but I never owned a deck. Uh, and I asked my mom if I could get them. And she kind of looked at me, and then she looked at the cards and she said, "I'll get them for you if you promise to use them."
Mm.
So I promised her that I would use them. And I was so excited, and I took them home. Now, I did not become a professional tarot reader at 10 years old, but I did take the cards themselves and begin to play with them. and begin to manipulate them. And you can see these different characters and these different figures. And you start to wonder, almost as if they were paper dolls or something. What is the Empress saying to the High Priestess? What is the Fool saying to the Hermit? And you start to wonder about their lives, and somehow, they can speak to you even if you're not an expert. And I still believe that to this day. You don't have to have studied tarot formally at all to let those cards speak to you and work their magic on you. And in some ways, that is the most innocent and intuitive way of all to use them. That said, I kept at it, and in time, studying with other people and then also reading, I just kind of really found my own love for tarot. I love anything that has to do with organized systems and colors
Mhm.
and beauty and like arranging things into and tarot is so systematized and it's so ordered, and you can make like all these clear little connections between each of the colors and each of the numbers and each of the little pictures that are on the cards, that it becomes this kind of ever unfolding thing that you can never get enough of. And I was really hooked by it, especially by my teenage years. And it's just never left me. And I've been lucky enough to study with people like Rachel Pollack and
Mhm.
Mary Greer, who I can remember reading their books when I was younger. Thinking to myself, wow, this is what I want to do in my life. Like I want to use these 78 cards and tell stories with them and help other people with them, um, like these women do. And, here I am.
My mother bought me my first deck. I was either 10 or 12, um, and it was a Rider Waite, and she had a tarot deck um, at some point, but she never really was serious about it. But
Mhm.
um, that's how I sort of, and I took it around and I like read for family. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just looking at the pictures. But the pictures were really intriguing, and I
Mhm.
had no idea. I kept at it, just playing with it and reading the little book that came with it, which tells you not much
Uh-huh.
at all. Um, and then I started to get a few more decks, and then I think I'm close to like 300 decks now.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
It
I
became kind of addictive. I've slowed down. It's like, an addiction. You feed
yeah.
it and then you get full and then you're like, what the hell did I do? And then what have I done? And I've sold maybe 10 decks total. Um, I have sold some in the past that I completely regret because they're out of print now.
Uh-huh.
But I really like historical decks
Mhm.
and the whole history behind tarot. Um, and I really don't like those sort of new decks that are like cartoony. Some of them are fun, but the ones that like I have the Golden Girls tarot, of course, just because I like the Golden
Yeah.
Girls.
Yeah.
Um, but some of the other decks, like the Star Spinner tarot, I don't really like. It was too
Oh
cutesy.
yeah. Yeah. What is that? Why does that one sound so familiar?
It's like pinks and it's called All-Inclusive
Oh,
deck.
yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And it
kept
was
that.
quite popular.
It was. I kept that for maybe 2 weeks, and I'm like, I'm not jiving with this deck. I don't like it. It
Yeah.
was almost like I couldn't take it serious.
Uh-huh.
But I am excited about the Garbage Pail Kids tarot, which is coming out.
Whoa. Yes, I have seen advertisements for
Yeah,
that.
because I used to collect them when I was like,
Yeah.
young, and
Yeah.
the nostalgia. I mean, I have like the zombie tarot and like the Housewives tarot. The Housewives tarot is fun because
Uh-huh.
I have like this 50s nostalgia. Of course, a lot of people have it. The
Uh-huh.
white picket fence, the wife
Yeah.
stays home.
Yeah. 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 In a lot of ways, the 50s nostalgia, there's so many things I think that are distasteful about the
Oh,
era that makes it fun. Like in some ways, they were so good at being bad that it's like, wow, this like they really had no shame.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what makes the nostalgia factor for the 50s. Like, admittedly, like it makes it, it's like this has got to be a joke, but it's not.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, the surface of the
yeah,
50s,
yeah,
once you dig deeper down, it's like, whoa, I,
yeah, yeah,
not everything was TV show perfect and lots of
correct.
issues, lots of problems, lots of social issues.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But I
the,
would
the yeah,
honestly say, I mean, that I do think, like, I do have a relentless love of, style and, the use of color and the kind of atomic designs and, the
yeah,
do some wonderful things. And in a lot of ways, there's a lot about it that's very aesthetically beautiful.
yeah. The One of my favorite books is The Bell Jar, and it's been
Mm,
described like the quintessential 50s novel because of sort of the things, and this is the nostalgia of that book, which is, and the problems in that book, which are interesting.
hmm
I had read that women in the 50s, when they got their hair done, a lot of times they'd sleep sitting up
hmm
because they didn't want to mess their hair up. I
Yeah.
mean, how uncomfortable is that? I
Uh,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Very uncomfortable. I remember one time I went on a cruise with my grandmother, and we would eat so much every single night that we would have to sleep sitting up because we would have indigestion so bad. So we'd be in
Yikes.
the cabin having to sit up propped up on pillows. So I can only imagine that if you're going out to get your hair done regularly, that would really stink.
Yeah, not washing your hair for like a week because it's like
Oh yeah.
super glued in
You know,
place.
that said, I do believe that people do wash their hair too much.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
When I had longer hair, I'd wash it like every other day.
mhm,
Or if I, um, like if I got sweaty, of course I'd wash it. But if I didn't really exert myself that day, I wouldn't go more than 3 days. But yeah, I think we overbathe anyway. But it's just how we are.
mhm,
Um, yeah, I'll skip a day pretty regularly with my hair, just
mhm.
because it's healthy, and I try to keep some of the natural oils there. And if you wash it too much, if you have greasy, oily hair, it makes it even worse because
Yeah,
your skin's trying to put it back there. So it's, you know, you're
yeah.
stripping the natural oils that are there anyway.
Mhm.
And you have great hair. I mean, your hair looks amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. It's from not washing it every day.
I think I did wash mine last night and conditioned it. I'm growing my hair just a little bit longer. Um, last year, yeah, last year this time it was like down to my shoulders, and I had pulled back, and I kind of miss it. I've always had sort of longish hair, kind of parted.
Mhm.
But yeah, and it's always been kind of curly. Your curls are more dramatic, though.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, so let's see. Do you have any favorite decks? How many decks do you have? And do you have any favorites that you always go to?
I probably have, and this may surprise you. I probably have only about 20 or maybe 25
Okay.
decks at the most. Um, and there's a couple reasons for that. One is I don't connect very strongly with contemporary or modern
Hmm.
decks. Um, and there are a couple that I have that I think are really cool and really fun. Like for instance, a modern deck that I do have that I do enjoy. I don't use it a lot, but is the Sabbath Tarot. Um,
Yes,
and
I know that one.
yeah, which is just like all photography and it's all like naked attractive men.
I
Um,
Yeah, I
and
criticize that one because I don't have it. Because yes, it's nice to look at, but the men are like cut and perfect and not flawed, and it,
I
it
hear that. Yeah,
it doesn't. I don't see a lot of people identifying with it because a lot of
yeah,
times when you give a good reading, you want to identify with the stuff, and you want to. So if collectible, yeah, but I don't know. Just everybody looked the same body. Where's
Yeah,
the dad? Where's the
I,
dad bod in the book in the deck? I want to see that. Where's
yeah,
the skinny waifish person?
uh, absolutely. I can 100% get on board with that. I believe, um, the creator of the deck, Alan Spires. My guess is that it's a vision, that it is, and that that's something, that they were his muses of the hour. That were very inspiring. So I agree with you 100% though. And in fact, I don't really use it because I don't connect to the figures and the cards so much. What I do enjoy about the deck is the emphasis on it's kind of an homage to all the men throughout history who have been accused of being witches, as well as, oftentimes we focus on, the witchcraft trials. Witchcraft persecution was always against women, largely it was, but there were lots of men who were
Mhm.
also accused, lots of men who were also killed. And it is kind of a little bit of a nod to that, and even the kind of old timey Americana superstitious witchcraft, which is all about, making a pact with the devil
Mhm.
himself. It does have that flair to it, which I think is very dramatic, and definitely drew me in, but I don't really use it for similar reasons as you. Now, I will say though, that is not my answer to your question. That
Okay.
is that is not one of my favorite decks. It just happens to be one of the few contemporary decks that I
Mhm.
have in my roster that I will use. I will say my two favorite decks of all time that I will always use no matter what are the Aquarian Tarot, uh, and the Morgan Greer. Um, Two just very standard, run
Mhm.
of the mill. Um, and I like them because, the Aquarian Tarot is from 1970, the Morgan Greer is from 1979. And I made darn sure when I got them that they were, the first printings, of those decks, because I want to use, you know, the deck from when it was made. But
Mhm.
more than just for the cool factor, the real reason why I got hooked on vintage decks was because of the lack of lamination on the cards. That is something that I just can't connect with a deck too much if it's over laminated.
Mhm.
And sometimes those modern decks, you use them and they're so laminated that when the cards are lying on the table, the glare from whatever light
Mhm.
source it is so strong that you have to move backwards and forwards to even see what is on the cards. And I feel like spiritually, energetically, to connect with the cards, I need to touch the fiber of the paper. I need to touch the material. I don't want to touch the plastic of lamination. I want to be in touch with the actual, organic fiber of the card. And the detraction of that is that in time, the card will wear down in my hands as I use it, right?
Mhm.
And I say, so be it. I too am an organic living
Mhm.
thing. I too am, deteriorating over time. If my decks deteriorate with me, then let's go on this, metaphysical, spiritual journey here on life, reading for other people together, um, and bear our scars proudly. If a little corner gets dinged or,
Mhm.
chipped or whatever, so be it.
Mhm. The oldest deck I have is a Attilia from 68 or 69.
Hmm.
And it is not laminated at all. And it is on like cardstock, and it's thick. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to bend it. And shuffling them is like very difficult because I don't want to chip or split the cards. It feels like they would split. You know how it's like
Oh yeah, like if you bent it too is it uh who is the publisher of it? Is it from
it's
Grimmel?
Grimaud.
Yeah. And often I know exactly what you're talking about. I have Tarot de Marseille from Grimaud, from the 1960s, and I just adore that cardstock. That is my favorite deck in my entire catalog of cards. But I know exactly what you mean. You feel like if you really, bridged it in a shuffle,
Mhm.
the cardstock would snap and bend, and then
Yeah, yeah,
you'd have a crease in the card forever. I know exactly what you mean by that, and so I'm always nervous to do it. So I'm always so timid
yeah,
to shuffle it, and that's probably why I don't use that one so much. Is because I actually am a little genuinely nervous to damage the cards.
yeah. I mean, it's lovely that they would sort of get used to your hands, you know.
Mm.
But yeah, I'd be scared. And that's, I think, the one thing about plastic lamination in general, just makes cards more durable. But yeah, I can see that tactile. Types of cards I don't like are the ones that are rubbery. You know, they got that rubbery
Oh,
coating.
yes, I know
Ah,
exactly what you mean.
those
Yeah.
are awful. It's like, it feels good. It's like a velvety feel. You
Hmm.
can't shuffle that worth a damn. You really can't.
Correct. Yeah, and those became quite popular, really. I don't know. I'd say maybe within like the last 10 years or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Those kind of became really popular as like the luxury.
Yes.
Like, whenever you get a tarot deck that's going
Oh,
to be packaged in some big box where you open it up and you unfold the paper, whatever, you can almost bet that those cards are going to have that rubberized
mhm.
texture to it. Somehow that is
Yeah.
supposed to like connote luxury or something. Um, I just personally believe there is something to be said about just good old-fashioned cardstock that just feels old and good in your hands. I mean, that's just I that's and even to this day, I still will get on eBay and I'll still kind of sift around and look for what old decks are floating around out there with no lamination that I don't
hmm
have.
Yeah, eBay is always good. Etsy, I found if you look on Etsy, the prices are not as good because they're trying to sell something and they're trying to
Yeah.
get. But on eBay, sometimes you can catch things. Like for the Atelier deck, I think I paid like $80 for it.
Wow,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
which
great.
is it's a good price. And I saw the same one on Etsy for I think close to 200. Um,
Yeah. Well, the trick is too, and I think this goes for any collectors out there, is that you really what you're hoping to find is somebody who's selling something who doesn't know what they
yes,
have.
yes.
Which is why I'll give away a little secret to any tarot deck collectors out there too that I do, which is like I will actually limit my search sometimes to really vague terms. Like I'll just type in like old tarot deck or vintage tarot deck or retro tarot deck or used tarot deck. And a lot of times you can find somebody who doesn't really know anything about the history of the publication of the deck or anything like that. They just have it in their, collection of stuff to sell, and they just say, "Oh, this is some old deck from the 70s." Okay, whatever, old tarot deck, and they're going to give it away for a song. But you're
Yeah.
right, when you go over to Etsy, that's when oftentimes it's more curated. And so people know what they have and people have looked it up and they're saying, okay, so this deck here is, I'm selling it for $325 because I know what it is.
hmm Yeah. Um, let's see. What you talked about your favorites. Um, what are your thoughts on tarot and the occult in general? And of course, the occult encompasses a ton of stuff, everything from demonology to Kabbalah to what are your thoughts on how tarot fits in with that?
Yeah, I will say right away that I think tarot's history is far more mundane than it's given credit for. Um, you know, because you had so many 19th century writers on tarot, and you had people like Eliphas Levi, and you had all these things where we were making these big, high blown connections, about tarot being this ancient book of wisdom from the Egyptians, and all this stuff. I really do believe that the origins of the tarot are far more mundane, and 9 times out of 10, when you're going to have a cartomancer, back in history, it's going to be, some village wise woman with a deck of playing cards.
Mhm.
And that's really the origin of what we're talking about here. Uh, the tarot just happened to be one of the decks that found its way into France from northern Italy. And they were using all kinds of decks to tell fortunes. Um, and we're understanding that the tarot really didn't find its way into France until maybe the 1500s, early 1500s, and certainly I believe there were games of chance and playing card games and things like that that existed. We know that there are decks that go back to the 1300s. That said, uh, human beings have always used things for divinatory purposes. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a deck of cards or a Bible or clouds or smoke from a fire, anything that we can tell stories with, we will do that with. And so I don't mean to negate tarot's, occultic significance by saying that its history is mundane. I just simply mean that, you know, there have been a lot more peasants and common people who have turned to divination throughout history, who are perhaps unrecorded or we don't say anything about, uh, and they would have had lots to say about what the cards meant, and the meanings that have kind of filtered down through us over time, and now that we have these really like super this that these particular cards correspond to these Sephiroth on the Tree of Life and all these things. Certainly, I don't think the village wise woman in 1610, was thinking about that. In no way, shape, or form. Does it make it any less cool that people thought about it later? No. If it's a system that makes sense to you and you can apply it to it and it facilitates a reading, excellent, great. Because really, if you look at some of the most awesome tarot writers, for instance, Rachel Pollack, in 78 Degrees of Wisdom, when she was putting together so much of the information for that book, that was kind of one of the first times that somebody really lucidly and with beautiful articulation drew connections to myths and stories and whole cultural histories that had not necessarily been stitched together in the patchwork way that she had done it to tell stories about different cards. And yet it has become one of the bedrocks of understanding tarot history. And so I think we're allowed to apply any meanings that we want to the cards. And I will say, medieval people, early modern people, they would have absolutely had a fascination for and an appreciation for mythology, astrology, and even what you could describe as folk magic. All of these different ideas were buzzing around in their heads in ways that aren't necessarily in ours. We don't necessarily think about things. We wouldn't necessarily think to describe something as Saturnian, but they would. If somebody was grumpy or if the sky was cloudy, they could in their head very easily associate it with the god Saturn, in ways that we don't necessarily think to do. So for us, sometimes it does take one extra step to get there. But sure, they had those associations, maybe not as formal.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do some rapid fire questions. You just give me one answer. You don't have to elaborate or anything. Just really quick things. It's just interesting. What's your favorite movie?
Hocus Pocus.
What's your favorite gemstone?
Ruby.
Let's see. What's your favorite play?
My favorite play. Romeo and Juliet.
What's your favorite type of pet?
Well, that's a very difficult one. Well, I want a cat very badly, so I'll say that.
What's your favorite book?
Brideshead Revisited.
I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
I've read it. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What's another book that's one of your favorites?
Out of Africa.
Let's see. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Really quick.
I would like to have my own tarot TV show. If I could dream up something wild and wacky and just totally off the rails, have a kind of like a tarot talk TV show.
Favorite dinner meal?
Roast pork tenderloin.
Favorite type of fabric?
Cotton.
Favorite piece of furniture?
That I own?
What type of furniture? Like just type.
Definitely a nice armchair. So I do, this isn't a rapid fire answer, but I do feel very comfortable if I can get myself in a chair with arms. If I go into a room and there's an armchair, I'll want to get into an armchair. I feel more protected inside the armchair. Whereas if I see a chair without arms, it makes me more apprehensive. And I'll sit in it. I'll be polite, but I would rather get myself into a place of greater safety in an armchair.
You have an antique bar top desk.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you get that from?
I got that on eBay, but it was a guy who was in New Jersey, and he was selling it, and he knew what he had, but he couldn't get it out of his like warehouse or whatever it was. And at the time, I had also bought a set of dishes from somebody who was in Ohio, and they had a truck, and they were going to drive these dishes to me in New York City. And along the way, I was like, oh, well, I bought this table from the 1600s from this guy in New Jersey, and he lives out on some dirt road. Would you mind taking the truck and going to pick up the table and bringing that to me also with my dishes? And he did. But it was just a rare find online.
You have a appreciation for older things. Where do you think that came from? Do you think it was the restaurant? Being in that environment?
In some ways, I will also say my mother and grandmother both are just antiques aficionados. They love anything old. My grandmother ran an antiques business for a while, and growing up as a child, it was always one of my favorite things to do to visit my grandmother. She lived in this house that was on the banks of the St. Lawrence River, which is the river that divides New York from Canada. And I would just go through her house there by the water, and I would pick up all these little knickknacks and all these trinkets, and I'd say, Grandma, where did you get this? Where did you get this? Where did you get this? And she would tell me where each of these things came from. And each little thing had a story. When I was young, somehow it implanted itself in my mind that antiques and precious little lovely objects are almost like memory receptacles. And I just have never been able to escape that. So it's like every little thing encapsulates a story to me.
What's the oldest thing you own?
The oldest thing I own would probably be probably my table from the 1600s. It could also be a chair that I have, but it's hard to determine the age of that chair. But I have a chair that could also be 17th century, but it might be 18th century, and I'm not totally sure. But I would say off the top of my head, probably the table.
Okay. Interesting. Hocus Pocus
Mm-hmm.
is your favorite movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. What do you like about the movie?
Oh my gosh, when I was a kid, I watched that movie so many times. I mean, to the point where, you can just start reciting it just with, off the top of your head. And there's something about Hocus Pocus to me when I was a kid, that the way that their house, their little cottage
Hmm.
was set up with, everything is this kind of old, creaky oak wood, everything, and you've got cauldrons and brooms, and everything was set up in such a way in that film. And yeah, sure, it's kind of cheesy. Well, it's very cheesy, but everything was done in such a way to just fascinate and tantalize the mind of a child who was interested in witchcraft. Uh, and and the characters are so, loud and crazy that it perpetually was interesting to me as a kid. And I remember when we were young, everybody would always want to play Hocus Pocus, and everybody always wanted to be Sarah, who is Sarah Jessica Parker's
Hmm.
character, because she's the most beautiful and she sings her magic song on a broomstick. But I always wanted to be Winifred. I always wanted to be Bette Midler's character. She's the one who controls the book,
Hmm.
and she's the more dramatic sister. Uh, and so that's kind of what I've always, I feel like in some ways, my life is kind of, I'm driving towards trying to fulfill that childhood dream of being Winifred Sanderson.
Um, what is a book you think everybody should read in
Uh,
general?
a book everybody should
Hmm.
read in general. Um, my gosh, what a difficult question. A book that I think everyone should read in general. It's so hard because my own literary interests are so scattered and mercurial. Like I'll pick up a book and I'll read a few pages and I'll put it down, and then I'll pick up another one and put it down, and then pick up another one and put it down, and it'll be a while until something sticks. So I
Hmm.
think it's so hard. Like something that might be the right book for me in the moment wouldn't be the right book for you, and so I wouldn't necessarily want to say you need to read this. Uh, but I will say. I don't think I can answer the
Oh,
question, Johnny. I don't think I can
that's
answer the
okay.
question. I can't think of something that I would
So,
demand that everyone else should read.
so narrowing that down, if someone wanted to buy a book about tarot, what would you recommend?
78 Degrees of
Okay.
Wisdom by Rachel Pollack.
I thought
And
that.
almost tied with that would be Tarot for Yourself by Mary K. Greer.
Hmm.
This just, you can't. If you have those two books,
Yeah.
there wouldn't be a single other book that I would say you need to have in order to be a tarot reader.
This, I actually have this with me. I'm actually at work at my desk, but not at home. I bought this book, Tarot
Tarot
Deciphered,
Richard. Ooh, who wrote that book?
and it's
Is it like
uh,
a encyclopedia sort of
T.
thing?
Susan Chang and M.M. Moline,
Oh, yes.
and I didn't realize it was based on their podcast that they have.
Hmm.
And listening to their podcast is almost verbatim as in the book. It's like it's been transcribed, but they've kind of
Yeah.
organized it.
Uh-huh.
It's actually quite good. The other T. Susan Chang book I have is a book of correspondences in tarot, and
Hmm.
that one is really good.
Hmm.
Um, it, the minutia in that is crazy, but
Yeah.
this one's fun. I like this one. It's very approachable.
Yeah.
It came out, I think, last year, maybe.
Yeah. I will say is that one
Yeah.
thing that does delight me about tarot books is that nowadays you do start to see more books like that
Mhm.
with authors like, you know, um, T. Susan Chang and Benabel Wen,
Mhm.
who have written books, and there's many, 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 many more tarot authors who this goes for, but that really goes so far above and beyond
Mhm.
the books that we all are familiar with from like 20 years ago, which is just like every single book is almost like a clone of an Eden Gray book or something, where it's like, for so long the market was just
Yeah.
inundated with book after book after book after book after book of just these kind of relatively rote descriptions of the card, and that was kind of all they gave you. And now, you have authors that are approaching it as this, really rigorous study, which is super exciting, which I think is amazing.
Well, I guess I wanted to wrap up. So let's see. I usually ask people, what are some thoughts about tarot that you would want people to know about you as a tarot reader, but also, I feel like I'm not articulating it correctly. If someone were to come to you and ask for a tarot reading, what would you say to them? How would you, I don't know, how would you approach them if they came to you, and how would you say, oh yeah, hold on, wait, let me get my card. What would you do?
I would say, and I often do say this, which is that to me, tarot is not some kind of predictive service. And I think most readers worth their salt agree with this,
Mhm.
hands down, is that, when you get a question and somebody says, is he going to call me back? Or, is my ex thinking about me? Which people are often inclined to ask. We want to know the answers to things that will soothe us quickly.
Mhm.
Uh, we are always tempted to ask those kinds of questions. But there's a great little phrase, I forget where I heard it, about using tarot. And they said garbage in, garbage out. So if you ask a question that's going to have, just silly implications, is he going to call me back? Well, expect a garbage answer from the cards. There's no way around that. But rather, what I recommend is to understand that the tarot is a conversation between you, the querent, the cards, and me, the reader. And what is going to happen is that if you can provide the most detailed and specific question possible, it doesn't have to be a long question, but if you can really hit the nail on the head and ask the thing that is most going to help you move forward in the direction that you want to go, if you can pinpoint that sort of question, then be prepared for a really cool and amazing experience, because what is going to happen is that I'm going to turn over a series of cards, and within those cards, just like a comic book, the pictures will line up sequentially, and we will tell a story together, the three of us, you, me, and the cards. And you will find, without a doubt, yourself in that story. You are a character in that story. And if the question has been asked in such a way where you can program the cards to give you a good answer, you better believe that that reading will be enriching, because you are going to be able to follow that story to its possible conclusions and take the actions that you need to take in order to achieve a goal or see the desired outcome in your life. Uh, and I think that is my biggest kind of description of what happens when we use the cards. Yes, certainly the cards are a sublime book of wisdom, like a very old person, but nevertheless, it kind of takes us to operate that machinery.
Very last question. What is your go-to spread?
A 3-card spread.
Okay.
That is my go-to spread every single time. Now, I will do a Celtic Cross. I will do various relationship spreads. I will do many different spreads when the feeling is right, and I feel like I see something very specific that they are asking for, and let's use this specific spread. But I find 8.5 times out of 10, it even goes for when I read for myself,
Mhm.
a 3-card spread will tell you so much information.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really appreciate you sitting down with me.
Oh, this has been
And
an absolute delight. Thank you, Johnny, for inviting me.
you're welcome. Thank you for I know we had, we rescheduled and all, with me and then you, and then so it's great for us to kind of connecting and touch. My trees did get cut down successfully, and they wrapped up by 3. I thought it would take longer, but they were out of there by 3, so it could have.
Wow. Yeah.
They were professionals. I mean, 3-story tree, they knock it down. They had a system. But anyway, thank you so much.